spiritual, political, sexual, or racial orientation, or gender identity, you're welcome here to worship with us and be part of this community. Are there any announcements this morning? Karen?
First announcement, has some spring plants up on the altar. If you'd like to purchase one after the service, you can come see me here at Coffee Hour. And separate Mondays, we have a raffle calendar going on this month, and $5 each.
And the yard sale, just as a reminder, the yard sale is next Saturday. If anybody's still interested in the table, let me know today. I'll be on with baked goods as a sign-up sheet on the coffee hour table. And anybody that wants to make donations for the church table, feel free to drop them by.
Julie?
There's pledge forms in the lobby. Certainly for next year.
Last call for announcements. All right, now open up with today's service with the reading, number 420. We are here to abet creation and to witness it, to notice each other's beautiful face and complex nature, so that creation need not play an empty house. Now I will welcome up our minister for today, Reverend Dr. Judy Campbell.
Thank you for inviting me back. I think my history goes way back with you. And I'm so happy to see this church. Okay, to do it. Father, my children making a joyful noise. So don't you be bothered by it. Mother, don't you be bothered by it. I'll just speak louder because I can. Come into this place of peace and let his silence heal your spirit. Come into this place of memory. Let its history warm your soul. Come into this place of prophecy and power, and let its vision change your heart. Welcome this Easter morning. And I understand it is the custom to go around and meet one another responsibly, safely, and at a suitable distance. My husband is with me today, Chris Stokes. He used to call this the halftime break. So please let us be quiet.
Okay, everybody back.
Please stand. The light of Chalice. Like the words are kindling this flame of heritage in action. Of the Savior. Now the affirmation. Love is the doctrine of the quest for truth, and service to dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge, freedom, to serve, to the end that all souls grow to harmony with the divine, thus to become one with each other and with God.
Before we go into the first hymn, I would like you to a prayer written by Norbert Chapek from the Czech Republic. And I'm taking a lot of my readings this morning from a little book called One and Universal, because my theme is Easter around the world. So I want to bring you some writings from in the name of Providence, which implants in the seed the future of the flower, and in our hearts, wanting people to live in harmony. In the name of the highest, in whom we move, and who makes the mother and father, the brother and sister, lover and loner, what they are. In the name of sages and great leaders who sacrifice their lives to hasten the coming of a mutual respect. Those who do our resolutions, sincerely, you, brothers and sisters, regardless of any kind of bar which estranges us from one another. In this holy resolve, may we be strengthened, knowing that we are God's family, that one spirit, the spirit of love, unites us, and never more perfect. That means plain, that means all of it. Does this sound like anything you've heard? If not word by word, what I'm stressing this morning is the universality of our faith. And anybody could have written these words, or Norbert Chapek was one of the favorites. So let us join together and use your patience in singing our first hymn, Day Light, Great Bells. Number 270 in your great hymn. Remain standing if you are comfortable, but by all means sit if it feels. would you please invite the children? Susan is our religious education, religious exploration, and enrichment. And if you don't want to come up, you can listen from where you are, and you can sit in the front seat. Do you usually sit here when you come up? Okay, sit. I think I read most of you. And I am going to put Susan to work. It's okay if you listen, it's a story for children. That's okay. Susan. Well, before we do anything, anybody knows anything Easter on that? What was Easter? Anything at all? Flowers, no. What's that thing covered up? You know. Say baskets. Basket. And sunflowers. Now, sunflowers aren't mostly an Easter flower. We have them on our pulpit today or up front today to remember a country in strife. Anybody remember that country? Right. So we're trying to, later on, we should lift off the white thing with that and just show off the ribbons. I brought a whole bunch of ribbons, yellow and blue ribbons. And at coffee hour today, when you come back from your meeting, you can take a ribbon and write a prayer or a blessing or just make cards on it. And then when you leave building today, tie them on the back of the trees. Take as many as you want and leave them there as a statement from this church that we stand in solidarity. Now, would you please put on that thing, that apron? There you go. And I'm going to put on this. And who's ever heard of translating? What do you know about translating? What? Yes. Anybody out there? What comes? Vampires. Who in particular? Actors. Contractors. In whose house I worked. I am wearing a Transylvanian Unitarian embroidered stole. And Susan is wearing an apron that one of the ladies in Transylvania made for me. One of the times I came over here. Now, Easter. Would you take what is in very Easter? This doesn't look very Easter. What is it? Onions. Is that what Easter is? Onions. Happy sour Easter. Wow. In Transylvania, and I've been there many times. I was lucky enough, and I'll talk about this not to the grown-up people, the big people. I was lucky enough to be able to celebrate Easter there. And the ladies in Transylvania, and it's the ladies, have a tradition that on Good Friday, they decorate eggs. And they decorate eggs, not with colors. What's that? It's an onion. Onion skins. Particularly red onion skins. So And if you want the picture process is on my Facebook page. I took a whole bunch of pictures. I did this yesterday. In my kitchen, I got all my eggs, put them in one basket. And the way the ladies do it is they go out and they collect herbs and wildflowers and little pretty greenery leaves and things. And then they take the eggs uncooked. If you're doing it with kids, cook them first. Lay the little herbs on the egg and wrap it, starting from the top with a piece of cheesecloth and tie it down. Then they load the eggs into a pan, cover it up with onion skins, add water so it's covered, drop in a little bit of vinegar, set the color. Now, you wait for half an hour or so, long, slow simmer. You bring out. So let the kids see them first. This is for show, not for eating, please. Just, I did this one time and my demonstration was halfway gone before I got through the church. And then you polish them up with olive oil. Up and down. And then that finishes our children's program today. Back down. Take the children out. We have lots to do today. I just want to bring these, and they'll be, you can come up after church and they'll be on the table. On the table are also Transylvanian embroideries. The ladies were so grateful to have us come. When we first came, there was no electricity in most of the houses. You flush the toilet with a bucket. If you were lucky to have one inside. And I polished them again with olive oil. But it was magical being in that environment. The first time I went was in the early 1990s. And they had so little. I'll be honest. But we had saved, I was part of the Norwell church then. And we gathered, saved money, and we sent them enough money to buy a washing machine. It was the one washing machine in the whole village. There's a second now, coming back. Well, thank you for listening to my story, kids. And I think you have some work to do, you know? You gonna sing Go Mountains?
I didn't have that.
Okay, what we're gonna do, that's okay, what we're gonna do is we're gonna do jazz hands for the kids as they move. Kids, stand up and we're all gonna go like this. We're gonna twinkle you off the board. Nice, sweethearts. Nice, sweethearts. Second, that's okay. Right.
If it is language that makes us human, one type of language is to listen. Silence can exist without speech, but speech cannot live without silence. Listen to the speech of others, listen even more to their silence. We now have the opportunity to share our joys and concerns with one another.
Two joys and one concern. I'll start with the concern, which is that my manager's mother passed away unexpectedly.
You can turn your pen around a little bit so the folks can hear you.
Sure. And then the two joys are one that we have spring has sprung in New England in the way that it does. So yesterday was a beautiful 70-degree day, and today is not as warm, though it's beautiful. And then the other joy is that we booked a vacation in January of 2021 for April of 2022, and we leave on Monday. It's actually happening.
I'd like to light a candle. This afternoon, my husband and I are going down to Rhode Island to visit the brand new house of our second oldest granddaughter. She's been in it 1 day and she's hosting Easter. That's what she wants. We are very happy.
Just happy to be here.
Sorry?
Just happy to be here.
I want to light a candle of thanks to Jude for all of the stuff for exploding he said it was the Easter bunny, but it lies. For making the front of the church look so wonderful, and then our ribbons will make it even better. So, thank you.
Yeah, for our close-up.
Yeah, I came down the street and
And I will light one more for all the joys and concerns that we hold in our hearts.
May we be together in the silence of the sacred, in the silence of our community, in the silence of the miracle of Easter. Be silent. Make your mind calm. Maintain it unruffled. You are the handiwork of Mother Earth. Consider your contribution for the betterment of humanity. As you came out of your mother's womb, you commenced to inhale air, the air from the atmosphere. You learned to pronounce sounds. You learned from the gentle breeze, the rain, and those sounds uttered by birds and animals. You learned from the words spoken by your parents. You learned to speak. You were nourished on your mother's milk, which had its origin in the fertility sucked from the produce of the earth. And so the love that we confer on the earth springs from our deep affection. Human life is the product of divine creation, and divinity is the blend of truth and justice. And that comes from a Unitarian from Plymouth.
The purpose of church is to encourage all who gather here to grow more generous in spirit and in action. This is the great end of all world's state traditions, to bring the human being closer to the divine by acts of creation and compassion. We now take an offering that allows us to exercise that all-important generosity of spirit, an offering that will support the self-supporting church and its many ministries. The gifts of the congregation. Please stand as you're willing and able before the dedication of the offering. So there was a miscue. We will not be reading number 507. Judy has found a reading from a collection of world perspectives. To live means to live together. The basis of our ideas rests on agreement rather than revelation. Our starting point is each person's religious beliefs. In a process of communication and mutual understanding, we seek to articulate our common views. In the spirit of freedom, each member's religious conviction is respected. For any system to flourish, it must have variety. We acknowledge the variety of human life and seek its enlargement, affirming the power of tolerance over fundamentalism, the worth of the individual over totalitarianism. As human beings capable of both love and destruction, we acknowledge that living in society sometimes requires of us the renunciation of our claims and influence. Aware of our interdependence, we understand the world about us as both ours and everyone else's. Human life develops best in the peaceful cohabitation of responsible people. We would contribute actively to this aim in our own society and country and as part of humankind. We would seek for the peaceful resolution of conflicts by means of understanding, but acknowledge that there are conflicts which we cannot resolve. These we must endure. We live in nature and are part of it. We feel our obligation to treat it with respect, even if personal sacrifices are required. To live means to live together. That was Helmut Kramer, translated by Manfred J. Paul from Germany.
I know that Unitarianism and Unitarian Universalism is a world religion, but intellectually, theologically, I've studied it, I know, but it never ceases to amaze me how similar we are in thought and word and deed. Many several, my Easter, your Easter, their Easter. Many several years ago, I had the honor and privilege of celebrating Easter and serving Holy Communion in Chalice, a tiny little Transylvanian village high in the Carpathian Mountains in the country of Romania. Can y'all hear me okay? I was part of our partner church program with the Unitarian Church in the village of Chalice. Not only did I participate in the serving of the communion on Easter, but went back later the following Sunday and participated in the christening of a child. It was not my first visit of these people, and by now we had some history together. I could speak a few fragments of butchered Hungarian. I had learned not to accept every glass of the famed Palinka, the Romanian firewater made in great quantities by every villager and offered on literally every occasion. Whenever you walked through a door, any door, bought something, got up in the morning, and sometimes a quick shot before you went off to church. I witnessed it. I did not do it. It gets the blood going, they said. I learned to manage my vegetarianism in a country of meat eaters who wanted to show their welcome and gratitude by feeding us at every turn, by killing the fatted calf or the Easter lamb in our honor. I learned about finding the balance between graciously accepting their overwhelming generosity and maintaining my own internal equilibrium. And that's another story. Today, my story is about the multiple Unitarian incarnations of Easter. Easter is observed by Unitarians around the world and by Unitarian Universalists here in the US. We have similar names and we have much in common with one another theologically and spiritually. And we have just as many differences. But I think our philosophy is similar, and we manage to think alike and walk the same path. Here in the States, Unitarian Universalists are less God, Jesus, and Bible focused. And at Easter, we tend to emphasize the resurgence of the spirit of life and the gift of the miraculous and predictable renewal of the greening of spring. We, in America, intentionally draw from the wisdom of many religious and ethical traditions. I did so this morning. And we enjoy the freedom of the pulpit, meaning we can take and create our own sermons from religious and secular sources of our own choosing and interpret them in our own voice. Very powerful. We hold in common with Unitarians around the world that Jesus, the man, was of God, but was not God himself. That God, if you choose to have a concept of God, is one, not three, hence Unitarian, and not Christian Trinitarian, as in Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Unitarians all over the world do not believe in the concept of original sin. that we are born flawed and need to be christened to clean the slate, so to speak. We believe that each child that's born is a gift to be celebrated and blessed for exactly who they are. It is the duty of the parents and godparents to be community and spiritual guides and protectors of their child. And while we acknowledge that the historical Jesus did live and did change the history of the world through his message, we believe he was born in the usual way, and that after he was brutally executed, his body was buried, and he stayed dead. Unitarians around the world hold these truths to be self-evident. Think back a few minutes to my time with the children and my Transylvania show and tell. The ladies in the church, that's Easter Sunday morning, I spoke by them a few words, but these were ladies who wore mud boots because the streets were not paved and they were mud from March to about mid-May. So whatever they had on their bodies, they had wellies, big boots. Most of them, if anybody in the family died, they were dressed in black. And many of the widows wore black for the rest of their lives. Many of them had kerchiefs on their head, around their heads. And faces that had seen communism, faces that had seen hunger, faces that had seen, and that had birthed children in their own bedrooms, that raised the food they eat. One lady bent over at the end of the service, came up to me, and with tears in her eyes, she handed me 2 eggs that looked like that. It was the greatest gift in the world. It really was. So there I was on Easter Sunday morning, some 15 years ago, in an unheated village church. It had snowed that morning, holding a thin gold plate called a paten, made in the 15th century. It was piled high with 1-inch cubes of bread baked by the women of the village. We were the Unitarian, Transylvanian Unitarians have Holy Communion 4 times a year: Christmas, New Year's, Easter. It was piled high with 1-inch cubes of bread baked by the women of the village. I was standing beside my friend and the minister of that church, the Reverend Farkas Danish, who was carrying a large pitcher of homemade village wine. Repeat, large pitcher, homemade village wine. That needed several refillings before we finished. Together, we went around to everyone in the room. They didn't come to us. We went out to them and celebrated our communion, our common values, our community, and the oneness of God as we understood God. Danish told me to look directly into the eyes of each person as I handed them a piece of bread. That eye contact at this time confirmed and affirmed our connections, and to say, Ishtenalja, God is one. So what were we celebrating? Holy Communion on Easter Sunday, if not the resurrection of Jesus. Children there, as part of their religious education, learn and memorize a catechism. I know there are some of you. How many of you learned a catechism as part of your religious education as a child? Call and response. Well, in this one, and they still do it, to this day, they still do it. In little kids read this. In this Unitarian catechism, they are asked, what is Good Friday? And the kids respond, that is the day when Jesus was crucified. Historical fact. What do we celebrate on Easter Sunday? We celebrate the resurrection of Jesus' spirit and his teachings. What a clarification. Jesus and his story is one of my many spiritual sources and resources. So is Mother Teresa. So is whoever that wonderful man is, the founder of the World Food Bank. I can't remember his name right now. He's running all over the world feeding people. So is Hildegard of Bingen, a 12th century nun who wrote, painted, composed music and poetry, founded her own monastery, and was a certified physician. The teachings of Buddha, and finally St. Julian of Norwich, English mystic from the 14th century, whose famous quote, "All will be well, all will be well, all manner of things will be well," continues to give me hope in these very dark days. And there's more. John Lennon, Robert Frost, and inaugural poet, Andrea Warner. And how many of you have heard, oh, you're one of those Unitarian Universalists, you believe anything you want, right? That's pretty easy. I bite my tongue, count to 10, smile through my clenched teeth and say, technically, yes. But to do it the way our forebears intended, meaning developing your own spiritual practice and belief system, is not like visiting a yard sale where you pick up the shiny objects nearest at hand and call it a day. We have to choose our own path and know and understand why we have done so. Ours is a living religion, constantly evolving and expanding in the light of new information, new understanding, and continued questioning. Questioning, right? That's our eighth principle. Questioning and exploration. The Transylvanian Unitarians are Christocentric, meaning Jesus' teachings are at the core of their belief system, and the Bible is the main source and example of thought, word, and deed within the community. Traditional English Unitarians were also Christocentric and Bible-centered. Did you know that Joseph Priestley and Josiah Wedgwood were Unitarians? Traditional English Unitarians, oh, you should, you were in the very church where Josiah Wedgwood worshiped. Yes. Bit of history there, we didn't know. Traditional English, not so today, but the two factions, the Christocentric and those who are more universalist in their thinking, are still at odds with each other. One might say the devil is in the details. Unitarian Universalism here in the US is a literal and veritable rainbow of faith and practice. Even amongst ourselves, in a denomination which purports to be all embracing, there are factions and fractions. Of course there are. The nature of humans is to take sides over the differences, and too often never see or embrace the whole or the greater good. That's not just in churches, families, politics. But the good news is there's still time. Here, today, together, we are celebrating the resurrection of the Spirit, however we choose to define it. We find that resurrection in the bursting forth of new growth. We find it in longer days and more light. We find it in the smile of our best friend, the eyes of a child. We find it in ways to be of greater service to our congregation and to the greater community. We believe the human spirit is resilient. That's the good news. That's the good news I'm preaching this morning. How we manifest this resilience and stability as a congregation is our choice, personally and in community. It is how we live into our faith. And then in that spirit, we ask ourselves, what can we do and how can we do more? Right here, right now. And that's why the ribbons will walk into the coffee hour and go on a table. And I encourage you to take as many as you want. I cut them up yesterday with one of those woolly cutters that has a zigzag on it. I made sure. And put them outside as our statement. And if you can't send money to one of the organizations, the Unitarians are doing a great job with their service committee, World Food Bank, pray. My Christian Science friends, I asked a friend of mine who was a leader, I said, what are you guys doing to help the Ukraine? And she said, nothing. I said, we don't do social action, we pray. Yeah. And so they are praying. So everything you do is a help in that situation. So much we can't do, but showing our solidarity is something we can do. So that's your personal thought to carry on today. What is your Easter? What renews your spirit? And how can you share that good news as one person in this beloved community of faith and practice? God bless you all. Let's see him. Lost my words are off.
And number 135 in the great hymnal, how happy are they?
Please stand as you are comfortably able. Or sit if that's more. You know what we can do? Yeah. Hold it, we'll read yours. I'm sure. I'm fine with that. Let's start again and read the first 3 verses, and we'll read it together. How happy are they that are born or taught, who do not serve another's will, whose armor is their honest thought, and simple truths their highest skill, whose passions not their rulers are, whose souls are still and freely moving, not tied unto public fame or pride, who have their mouths from roots, whose conscience is their strong retreat, who stay no flatterer and feet, nor ruin fate oppressors great. So benediction for you. You may sit or you may stand. If here you have found freedom, take it with you into the world. If you have found comfort, go and share it with others. If you have dreamed dreams, help one another so they may come true. If you have love, give some back to a bruised and hurting world. Go in peace. God bless you. Extinguishing. That was good.
Please recite with me the words in the order of service. He extinguished this flame that not the light of truth, for the mournful community, for the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are